Hello and welcome to the Miscast table. My name is Jonas and today we're bringing you an analysis of the shooting phase of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition as we want to go over some of the ranged infantry models in the game and try to find out which ones are the very best and which ones are the ones that have more things to be desired from them. Before we start, I want to make some brief disclaimers. Warhammer Fantasy Battles is a complex game system and this video alone isn't fully going to be able to take into account how each of the units functions when fielded alongside other units, when you are playing various scenarios with special rules, terrain pieces and so forth. Meaning that even though we want to bring as good information as possible, we would still want you to further evaluate each of the units that we talk about on your own, as they need to be considered in fully when fielded alongside the rest of your army and when you take into consideration your grand strategy. Because even if you have the best ranged unit in the game, if you are playing a melee-oriented army, that unit isn't going to perform to their fullest if every target that you want to shoot at is locked in melee, for example. It should also be mentioned that we want this video to be a tool of useful information for you to consider when you build your army, but our findings are in no means final. If you want to disagree with us, we welcome any discussion in the comment section where you can give your own input on why you think that we are correct or why you think that we are incorrect about certain findings that we have put forth. Instead, we kind of want you to view this video as entertainment as much as an analysis for you to consider, and that you take your own time and make up your own mind regarding which units that you think are good when playing the game. Because, Warhammer is a complex game system and stats alone isn't the final verdict on how effective a unit is. Instead, they need to be considered as a part of a whole. And with that mentioned, I think that we should also go over some of the methodology as we are utilizing a simulation to help with our analysis. The basis for our analysis is a program that runs a simulation of each of the infantry ranged units and where we test their performance against one another. And this is done by emulating a battle or a skirmish against each other, and we make a simulation of 100,000 iteration against each target so that we can simulate the results and tally up the numbers to make an evaluation and analysis afterwards. We have set up a base parameter where each of the models starts at a range of 31 inches from each other, meaning that normally no unit should be in range from one another at the very start. And we are testing them over 6 game rounds, so that each unit gets 1 turn each, and then we move up until the full 6 turns have been played through. Each unit is worth as close to 240 points as possible, meaning that if a model costs 12 points, you can field 20 of them, so that the whole unit costs 240. And if a model costs 13 points, the whole unit is then filled by 18 models and will be worth 234 points. Each unit will try to rank up so that they have at most 10 models in the front rank, and they will fire from the 2 foremost ranks. And if they have volley fire or other special rules such as martial prowess, they will also fire from the additional ranks accordingly to their special rule. We randomize which unit starts the encounter, and then they operate by following a kind of simple logic. If a unit is too far away to fire their weapon, they will move closer. If they are still too far away from firing their weapons, they will instead opt to march to get in range as close and quickly as possible. If a unit is within range after having moved and can fire, they will do so, applying whatever negative to hit modifier that is applicable from long range or moving and firing and so forth. If they have quick to fire and they are not putting themselves in harm's way, they will opt to go closer so that they get a better chance at dealing more damage in future turns. Dice rolls are randomized when rolling to hit, to wound, and when the target unit tries to make their armor saves or ward saves. If the target unit loses at least 1/4 of their models, units, they have to take a panic test unless they have some special rules that allows them to ignore panic tests. For the sake of the simulation, if a unit fails their panic test and routes, they are considered to have lost that engagement and encounter. And we then move up the iterations and try for the next encounter. If a target is still standing, then the turn is passed and the other unit gets to make a retaliating attack or advancing move in accordance to the logic that was previously explained. When the 6 rounds are over, we tally up the results, and if a unit has at least 10% more models left standing than the target, then they are considered the winner of that encounter. If the difference is less than 10%, we count it as a stalemate for both units. After each unit has been matched against one another, we then test them against a target practice, where each of the units gets to make 100,000 simulated attacks and encounters against infantry units, heavily armored cavalry unit that has a 1+ armor save, trolls that are monsters infantry with a 4+ regeneration save, and then we also have a monster target that has a high toughness value and a 4+ armor save. The application and program takes into account any of the special rules for that might be relevant, such as move or fire, flaming attacks, immune to psychology, multiple shots, ward save against flaming attacks, long range skirmishers, and so forth. There is, however, one special rule that I want to mention because it needs to be handled in a certain mannerism, and that is the Scouts special rule. Which allows a unit to set up anywhere on the battlefield outside of 12 inches, and we have opted to use it in such a way that if a unit has scouts, it tries to set itself up so that it is outside of the forward arc of the target, so that they have to move when it is their turn, so that they cannot like fire straight away and instead have to take the penalties. And the scouting unit is also set up in such a way that it has the maximum range that their weapon system allows them. Finally, with that out of the way, let's talk through each of the units. Starting off, we have an interesting unit. We have the Flamers of Tzeentch. They're an elite infantry unit, and they have the Daemons of Tzeentch, Demonic, Skirmishers, and Warpflame special rules. They attack using the Flames of Tzeentch, that has a range of 18, a strength value of 4, and the multiple shots D6 and Warpflame special rules. And this is an interesting unit for sure. They have really good characteristics. They have a movement value of 6, a ballistic skill of 4, and a toughness of 4 with 2 wounds per model. That makes them excellent at surviving in the duel part of the simulation. They do, however, come at a slightly higher point cost per model, costing a whole 40 points per model, which makes it so that each time that they do lose a model, their damage output goes down significantly. They also have a weird special rule that is Warpflame, that isn't fully beneficial for them. That makes it so that each time that they deal sufficient amounts of damage, the target needs to make a toughness test. And provided that the target fails that toughness test, they take additional damage. However, if they succeed in their toughness test, they instead gain the regeneration special rule at a 6+, or improve by 1 any regeneration save that they already have. And considering that this unit doesn't have flaming attacks, which is kind of weird, I kind of feel that they should have, considering their aesthetics, they can easily put themselves at a disadvantage if the target succeeds in that test early in the game, as stacking up regeneration for the opponent isn't something that you necessarily want to do with this. However, that multiple shot D6 and high ballistic skill value and fair strength value of 4 is plenty good, and I think they are a force to be reckoned with. And I have to put them in the upper tiers because of that. They suffer slightly against higher armored cavalry units and higher toughness monsters, but I still want to give them a fair B grade ranking, as they are a good unit for sure. Moving on to the Dark Elves. The first unit that we're going to review is the Black Ark Corsairs. They are a pirate-themed unit that roams the high sea on the ominous Black Ark ships of the Dark Elves, trying to seek plunder, slaves, and combat wherever it is beneficial for them. For the point of this simulation, we have given them Reaper handbows. so that we can test out their ranged capabilities. They come equipped with light armor and sea dragon cloak, giving them an armor save of 4+. The Reaper handbows have a range of 12, a strength value of 3, multiple shots 2, and quick to fire special rules. This makes it so that they really need to get up close and personal to be effective, and they are a kind of a hybrid infantry unit, meaning that you can opt to go for them to be equipped both for melee and for range with these Reaper handbows, where they are meant to soften up the targets before they get up close and personal. They have really good elven characteristics, a movement value of 5, good weapon skill and ballistic skill of 4, and a high initiative value. They have kind of good survivability thanks to that scale cloak. That terrible weapon, however, comes to haunt them, as that short range makes them suffer from multiple negative to hit modifiers. They are seldom able to get in within close range, and when they hit, they have a hard time wounding anything. And if the target has any kind of armor, they are likely to save it. Also mentioning that in the duel simulation, these guys have to run very far before they are able to attack their target, meaning that they take plenty of damage meanwhile. So they do not come up favorably in our simulation, and I have to give them a kind of low ranking of E, not the absolute bottom, but they are not strong for sure. Kind of comes from being a hybrid unit. It's like you're good at many of things, but you're not really excellent at any of them, and it really shows in the shooting phase. The other ranged unit that the Dark Elves have in the core slot is the Dark Shards. They have a much improved ranged weapon with the Reaper crossbows that fire at a range of 24 instead, and it also has the armor piercing special rule alongside the multiple shots 2 special rule. They have slightly worse survivability, as they only have a 6+ armor save from their light armor. It can be upgraded to 5+ if you give them shields, but then their damage output is lowered slightly, as each model then costs 1 point more. When you consider their damage output in conjuncture with their model cost, they are only average against infantry and monsters infantry. They do not fare well in the duel setup, as they are simply too costly and they suffer from losing models due to their low survivability. And against higher toughness targets or heavily armored cavalry, they do not have sufficient damage output to be able to punch through. The last unit of the Dark Elves are the Shades. They also have the Scouts and Skirmisher special rule, and unlike their Dark Shard counterparts, this unit is actually quite good. They have ultra elite characteristics, even further improving that weapon skill and ballistic skill up to 5, which makes it so that they can more sufficiently make use of that Reaper crossbow, and being able to set up in a scenario where you can utilize the Scouts rule so that you can come in the flank, pick your target, makes it so that they are able to deal damage from the very get-go. And thanks to Skirmishers and that flanking capability, they're kind of hard for the opponent to deal with. And in the duel simulation, when they set up at the proper range against whatever target they are fighting against, they actually start dealing sufficient damage early thanks to that high ballistic skill. They're quite strong against infantry, but thanks to that multiple shot, they can actually deal out sufficient damage against monsters infantry, the cavalry and the monsters as well, meaning that I want to give them a high ranking that mirrors this. I think this is a good ranged unit for the Dark Elves. Moving on, we have the Dwarfs, and we're gonna start by taking a look at the Quarrelers. They have Ancestral Grudge, Relentless, Resolute and Shield Wall special rules. They come equipped with Dwarf crossbows that has a range of 30 and a strength value of 4. It is dwarf crafted, meaning that they do not suffer the -1 to hit modifier when being charged and making a stand and shoot reaction. It doesn't really come into play in our simulation, but it should be mentioned. They also have the Move or Fire special rule and are equipped with heavy armor. This unit fared quite well in our simulation. It has a good toughness, high leadership, paired with that heavy armor, a good survivability, and that long range from the crossbows certainly comes in hand as well. They suffer slightly from their point cost, and their low mobility. If they ever need to move to get into range, they lose a whole round of shooting, and from their point cost, they are only slightly above average against the infantry and monstrous infantry attacks, and they suffer slightly against more heavily armored cavalry units and higher toughness targets. But still, I would call that they are a fine shooting unit for sure. Moving on, we have their brethren, the Thunderers, that have the same special rules. They, however, come equipped with dwarf handguns instead of crossbows, which has a range of 24 and the armor-piercing special rule, making them slightly more adept at dealing with the heavily armored units and infantries that has some kind of armor save. Kinda good against anything other than high toughness targets, against which they suffer slightly. They also fared well in the duel simulation, and I think a good ranking should reflect that. Moving on, we have the elite infantry of the dwarfs, or one of the elite infantries, the Rangers. They also have the scout special rule. They are equipped with dwarf crossbows and throwing axes. And throwing axes increases their strength value by 1, making it so that they strike at range 6 at a strength value of 5 with the quick to fire special rule. They normally come equipped with heavy armor, but you can also upgrade them to give them shields. They have a very good survivability thanks to that. They are hard to deal with, and if you set them out as scouts, they can get into a good position where they are able to deal out damage as quickly as possible. However, they are a hybrid unit, and their point value reflects that. They have a versatile range of equipment, but for shooting purposes they suffer due to that point cost. They are somewhat effective against infantry and monstrous infantry, but they are not really great at shooting at heavily armored targets or high toughness targets, meaning that I have to give them a kind of low ranking of D. I do not think that you should be picking these units solely for their shooting purposes. If you want to make use of them, you need to put them into your grand strategy and make them work for it in more ways than just in the shooting phase. Moving on, we have the Iron Drakes. This is the other elite infantry unit for the dwarves. They come equipped with Drake guns that has a range of 18 and a strength value of 5 with the armor piercing, flaming attacks, dwarf crafted and quick to fire special rules. They have also a forge proven Gromril armor that gives them an armor save of 4+ and a ward save of 6+, which goes up to a 2+ ward save against flaming attacks. They also have really good characteristics, excellent survivability, amongst the very best thanks to that Gromril armor, and their weapon system is just phenomenal. That Drake gun of a range 18 with quick to fire makes it so that you can actually move these guys up and they really put the hurt on. Thanks to that strength 5 value with armor piercing, these guys can take on anything. They are strong against monstrous infantry, they are strong against heavily armored cavalry, high toughness targets. I have to give them an absolute S ranking because the only problem these guys have is their cost, and their high strength value of weapons makes it so that they kind of overkill infantry units. They're not really point effective against them because they have kind of too good stats to be. It's not worthwhile to waste their effectiveness at mere infantry. Man. You should probably be utilizing these against tougher targets. A solid choice for the dwarves. Then we have the evil counterparts, the Chaos Dwarfs, and we start off by taking a look at the Infernal Guard. They have the Contempt, Relentless and Resolute special rules, and you can equip these with either the Hailshot Blunderbuss that has a range 12 strength 3 characteristic, with the armor piercing multiple shots D3 rule, also the Hailshot rules. And it should be mentioned that the Infernal Guard are kind of hard to evaluate because of their requirements. You really want these guys to be in great numbers because then you get the bonus from the Hailshot ability. That makes it so that if you have 10 models, then you do not suffer the range penalty from long range, and if you have a full 20, you get to start to reroll failed to wound rolls. They have a Black Shard armor and shield, giving them an armor save of 3+ and a ward save of 5+ against flaming attacks. You can also equip them with Fire Glaives that has a range of 18 and a strength value of 4 with armor piercing. So it is kind of a lower ranged handgun that doesn't have the move or fire special rule. They have some interesting stat lines as well. They have a high toughness value, high leadership, and that armor save gives them a really good survivability. However, they are suffering from that short range a bit, and their high point cost makes it so that they are not really overly point effective against any targets. They can deal fair amounts of damage against infantry, especially if you activate that full hail shot bonus, but I have to give them a fairly low ranking in the shooting round because of their point cost. They are not really great against any of the other targets as well. Then we have the Hobgoblin Cutthroats that are also available to the Chaos Dwarfs, and this is the first cheap option that we are reviewing. You can feel these ones in hordes because they are dirt cheap, to say the least. And they have the Backstabbers special rule and the Hobgoblin Animosity, which is a bit problematic. They come equipped with bows for our testing purposes today, which gives them a range of 24, a strength value of 3, and the Volley Fire special rule. They normally have light armor, that giving them a 6+ armor save, but you can upgrade them to a 5+ if you give them a shield. They have terrible characteristics, like human-like characteristics, but with a terrible leadership of only 6. And that animosity means that you probably want to babysit them with other Chaos Dwarfs so that they don't start to squabble or panic amongst themselves. Their big upside, and that is a big upside, is their low point cost, however. Because of that, you can field them in really large numbers, and when you have 40+ of these, they actually start to put on the hurt against infantry and monsters infantry models. They do suffer slightly against higher toughness and armored targets, but I still think that they are a fair choice for the shooting phase. Moving on to the High Elves, we are starting out with the Archers. All of the High Elves have the Always Strike First, Martial Prowess, and Valor of Ages special rule, making them capable of fighting and firing from 3 ranks rather than only 2. These archers are equipped with longbows that allow them to fire at a range of 30 with the strength value of 3 with volley fire. They have elite elven characteristics, high ballistic skill and weapon skill, good initiative value and leadership, and that long range of 30 is also very, very handy. They do, however, suffer from low survivability, as only having toughness 3 and no armor save is kind of hurtful. They need to rely on that range to stay alive. They are good against infantry and monsters infantry. They are relatively cheap and you can get a fair amount of them. And they are also, thanks to that, quite good against other targets as well. I think they are a baseline archery unit, and I want to give them a C to reflect that. Then we have the Lothern Sea Guard. That is a hybrid infantry unit for the High Elves. They come equipped with bows for this exercise, which gives them a range of 24 and volley fire and strength 3. You can upgrade them to have shields, which allows them to have a 5+ armor save. And their somewhat lesser range and hybrid setup doesn't make them really shine in the shooting phase. They are decent against infantry and monsters infantry, capable of chipping away at more armored targets as well. They suffer slightly against higher toughness targets because they you do not get that many of these units due to their point cost, making them less effective, and I therefore want the D grading to reflect upon that. Then we have one of the elite infantry units available to the High Elves, the Shadow Warriors. And they are similar to the Shades, where they have Scouts and Skirmishers special rules. These ones also have hatred against the Dark Elves. They come equipped with longbows, giving them a range of 30 and a light armor save. They also have the ultra elite characteristics of a weapon skill of 5 and ballistic skill of 5, which is very good. And that long range, allowing them to set up in whatever mannerism that suits them better, is really beneficial to them. The only thing that they suffer slightly from is their higher point cost and lower survivability. They are good against infantry, monsters infantry, heavily armored cavalry, thanks to their high ballistic skill, allowing them to make wounds at most of the targets wherever they should be fielded. They are slightly less effective against higher toughness targets. Then we have the Sisters of Avalorn, and they are equipped with a unique weapon system. They have the Bows of Avalorn, range 24 with an upgraded strength value to 4. They have the Arrows of Isha special rule, which allows them to more easily wound targets from the Destruction faction. They also have flaming attacks and volley fire on that weapon, equipped with light armor, giving them a 6+ armor save. And these guys are really good because of their high ballistic skill value and their excellent weapon. Sure, they have low survivability, but their capability of dealing out very high numbers of damage makes them an absolute beast on the battlefield. I think that these archers are the premier ranged unit of the game. They have no problems at dealing damage against almost any target, and that strength value of 4, flaming attacks, and yeah, they are simply a really good ranged unit. I have to give them an S rank. They are superb. Moving on, we have the Lizardmen. All of the ranged units are skinks, and we start off by taking a look at the skink cohort. And they have aquatic, cold-blooded, and spawnkin. And they can be equipped with either Lustrian javelins that has a range of 12, strength value of 3. However, they have the very strong rule poison attacks and quick to fire. Thanks to their scaly skin and shields, they also have an armor save of 5+. And these are actually one of the premier units in the shooting phase. Much thanks to their very low point cost and the poison attacks, which makes it so that they are able to deal damage against almost anything, and especially monsters, where their high model count makes it so that they get to make lots of shooting attacks against them and quite easily put on the hurt. They have a slightly problematic leadership value of only 5. Cold-blooded makes it so that you roll 3 dice, but when you have such low leadership to roll against, you actually have a worse chance, slightly worse chance, than succeeding at a regular leadership of 7. They have a, I think it comes out to like 52% to make a leadership test with that low value. You can add in Croxigors, which improves their leadership to 7 and gives you a hard-hitting infantry melee unit that makes it so that these can function in a hybrid unit kind of way. And I think that should be added in when we make the evaluation of them. You also have the option to field skink skirmishers, which has the aquatic, cold-blooded and skirmisher special rule. They can take either blowpipe or Lustrian javelins, which has the poison attacks and multiple shots 2 special rule if you give them the blowpipes. They also have a low point cost, but they are slightly more expensive than the cohort, which makes it so that they come out slightly worse when you tally everything up and consider the point effectiveness. They are still a really good shooting unit. Lastly, we have the Chameleon Skinks, which is an interesting unit because they have the Chameleon special rule alongside the Scouts and Skirmisher special rule and Cold-Blooded and Aquatic. And Chameleon works like kind of similar like Skirmishers, which it gives any opponent an additional -1 modifier when they make to hit rolls against them, thanks to their ability to camouflage themselves. They're equipped with blowpipes that has poison attacks, multiple shots 2 at the range of 12. These ones are kind of significantly more expensive, however, when you consider skinks, and they have a really low survivability thanks to only being toughness 2 and only having skirmishers and chameleon to rely upon makes it so that if any opponent has template weapons, these models drop off the table real quick. They cannot handle units such as gyrocopter or any flaming breath weapons that are out there. They just get roasted. But if you can get them into position, they are capable of dealing damage to monsters thanks to the poisonous attacks, and they can actually deal a bit of damage against any other kind of unit as well. Moving on, we have the Nobblers from the Ogre Kingdoms. This is another horde kind of unit. They are dirt cheap, They have the special rule Beneath Contempt, making it so that if they break or panic, they do not cause additional panics amongst other ogre models. So it doesn't really come into play for our simulation and trials. They are equipped with throwing weapons, and that has a range of 6, and they only have a strength value of 2, meaning that the throwing weapons deal that amount of damage as well, with the quick to fire special rule. And these units are very lackluster, because even though they have the lowest point cost amongst all of the models that we have tested, you get a ton of them. You almost get 100 nobblers, you get 90 plus of them. Their very low leadership is somewhat problematic. They only have leadership value of 5. Their terrible characteristics and their very terrible weapon system, they only have their own throwing capabilities to rely upon, makes it so that they cannot deal any sufficient amount of damage against almost any target. Sure, they are a nuisance to get off the table in the ranged phase. They simply have too many models to kill or force a leadership test against, or force a panic test against. But in return, they do not deal any significant amount of damage. They are not meant for the shooting phase. That throwing weapon is terrible, and I have to give them a terrible grading. I think that these ones are at the very bottom of the barrel, and I think that the F grade should be a sufficient ranking, and I do not recommend anyone to take these units for the shooting capabilities. You need to make use of their trapper ability or have them coming in as a flanking unit or something else. They are simply they have too bad stat lines. Then we have the Lead Belchers. They are a monstrous infantry unit with a fairly decent weapon. They have the Lead Belcher gun that has a range of 24, a strength value of 4, and a ton of special rules. They have armor piercing, multiple shots d6, slow to fire, and it ignores any negative to hit modifiers for moving or for multiple shots. They are equipped with a light armor, giving them a t-shirt save of 6+. And they are an interesting unit because thanks to that excellent weapon, they can actually deal out some significant amount of damage because... they are, however, monstrous infantry models, meaning that their point cost is very high, so you cannot field that many of them in return. And for that reason, they suffer slightly when we evaluate them. I have to give them an average grade. They're kind of fun unit, you get to roll tons of dice with them, but I still think that their point cost limits them to a C ranking. Then we have the Man-Eaters, and they are an elite monstrous infantry unit. They have the Fear, Ogre Charge, Stomp, special rules, alongside the Been There, Done That, which allows this unit to pick a number of different special rules. For this simulation, we have found that poisoned attacks and ignores panic is beneficial, but you can also take scouts with them. They have a armor piercing, quick to fire special rule. If you give them a brace of ogre pistols, they get the multiple shots 2 special rule as well. They are an interesting unit for sure. I do think that they are very heavily costed, and for testing them out they suffer greatly because of that. They also have good ballistic skill, a value of 4, and a good toughness value of 4. But when you add everything together, their point cost just really doesn't validate their usefulness in the shooting phase. These units really need to be put to more use than only from shooting. They need to do some melee fightings, as ogres probably should be doing. And when we simulated them, they placed amongst the very worst amongst every unit, and I have to give them an F tier ranking to reflect that. Moving on, we have the Orcs and Goblins, and we start out with the Goblin unit. They are an infantry unit that has the Animosity and Fear Elves special rules. They come equipped with short bows for our testing purposes. That gives them a range of 18 and a strength value of 3 and volley fire. You can upgrade their light armor by giving them shields so that they have either a 6+ or a 5+ armor save. They have a very low point cost, They do suffer slightly from the animosity, which can make them do annoying stuff to your own team. They also have a really low survivability, as they are only toughness 3 and only have that weak armor save. And to further limit them, they have a low leadership value of 6. But similarly to the hobgoblins, simply because of their low point cost, you can amass these in very large numbers. And when you tally everything up, if you shoot a ton of arrows, even if they are from goblins, it actually hurts. They are capable of dealing with both infantry and monsters infantry, cavalry. They suffer slightly from high toughness target, but even against them they can always get some lucky 6s in, and the monsters can fail their armor and regeneration or any ward saves that they might have. So I actually want to give these guys a C grade ranking. I think that they are saved from their low point cost. And similarly, we have the Night Goblins. They have the same equipment. They also have the Hatred against Dwarf special rules. They cannot take shields, which makes their survivability even worse. But their point cost is also very low. The only downside that I want to mention is that if you take these guys, they actually have a problem, that is that they take up a very large part of the deployment area, because each of the models is 20 by 20, and if you take full blocks of them, they can actually hinder yourself in the deployment area. So they do have that aspect as well, which needs to be mentioned. But I think they are a fine shooting unit for range purposes. Then we have the last ranged unit for the Orcs and Goblins. We have Orc Arrow Boys. They have animosities as well, but they also have the Shoppas and Size Matters special rule. They have better bows. They have regular bows. They have a range of 24 with a strength value of 3 and volley fire special rule, equipped with light armors. And they have a really low point cost as well, or I should say they have a low point cost as well. They suffer slightly from that animosity. These guys, however, do not get to field as many models, and therefore are not really a great unit in the shooting phase. They do not have excellent range capabilities, and they don't deal sufficient amounts of damage to warrant taking them for merely their shooting purposes. I think that if you are fielding these ones, you need to be willing to commit them to melee as well, otherwise they are not worth it. Moving on, we have the archers from the Empire. They have the regimental unit special rule and skirmishers special rule. They are equipped with bows at a range of 24 with a strength value of 3 with volley fire. They have a low survivability, but they don't cost much. I think that considering that other ranged units can quite easily deal with them, and that they are not great against targets, I don't want to put them at a C grade. I want to put them slightly below to reflect that. Moving on, we have more Empire ranged units. We have the crossbowman that has crossbows that allows them to fire at range 30 with a strength value of 4 with move or fire special rule. This long range is really beneficial for them. That puts them out of harm's way from other ranged units, and they tend to win out in the simulation slightly thanks to that. They still have low survivability, so if they are up against targets that can reach them from the get-go, they suffer slightly. I still think that thanks to the crossbows, they are a kind of staple good choice for ranged combat, so I'm gonna give them a C grade. We also have the handgunners. They have the same rules. They are a regimental unit. They have handguns that gives them a range of 24, strength value of 4 with armor piercing and move or fire. Similarly to the crossbowman, they benefit from the good weapon. I think that they have a good time dealing against infantry and monsters infantry. They can sufficiently handle the armored target, and they suffer slightly against monsters with high toughness. Still a fine unit, I give them a C. Lastly, for the Empire, we have the Huntsmen. They have the Scouts and Skirmishers special rule. They are equipped with bows that allow them to fire at a range of 24 at strength 3 with volley fire. They also have no armor save and a low toughness value, and they are not sufficiently capable of dealing with other units thanks to that, putting them at a lower ranking, similarly to the archers, at a final grade of D. Then we have a other human faction. We have Noble Bretonnia, and we are taking a look at the Bowmen. And these have the Peasant's Duty, and you can either field them with defensive stakes or with skirmishers. Either choice can also take Braziers, which gives them a flaming attack, which can be helpful, especially against the trolls with the regeneration. They have excellent weapons. They have longbows that gives them a range of 30, strength value of 3 and volley fire. You can also equip them with light armor to give them an armor save of 6+. They benefit greatly from one thing more than others, and that is their low point cost. They have terrible leadership. Leadership 5 is atrocious, and they cannot stand if they are forced to take a leadership test. They can rely upon any noble or paladin or knight that is nearby to upgrade that, but if they are left on their own, their leadership is absolutely terrible. Luckily for them, you can take them in very large numbers, meaning that they become really hard in the shooting phase for other ranged units to force enough casualties onto them. And thanks to their large numbers, they are actually also quite capable of dealing out damage. And I think that this is a slightly above average ranged unit. I want to give them a B ranking to cement that in. Moving on, we have the Tomb Kings and the Skeleton Archers. They have an interesting special rule. They have the Arrows of Asaph, which makes it so that they always hit at their ballistic skill value, meaning that these units always hit at 5+. They are also Nehekaran Undead, meaning that they do not need to test for panic if they would take heavy casualties, making it so that it's really hard in the duel phase for other units to get these ones off the table, because you need to kill every single last skeleton archer if you want to rout them, and that is hard to do in the shooting phase. And they come equipped with bows that has a range of 24 and the volley fire special rule. They have a low point cost. They have that nifty Arrows of Asaph ability, and I think that puts them at a average or slightly above average grade of C. It is a fine ranged unit. Then we have another weird elite monstrous infantry shooting unit. We have the Ushabti. They are an animated construct, also having the rules for Arrows of Asaph and Nehekaran Undead. They also get to stomp if they get into melee. They can be equipped with great bows, giving them a range of 30 and a full strength value of 6. And they also weirdly have the volley fire special rule if you would, by some unknown reason, want to field them in more ranks than 2. These units have kind of good characteristics. They have a decent movement value, high toughness. They suffer slightly from not having any armor save, but that long range is beneficial for them, alongside the Arrows of Asaph special rule. Due to their very low model count, and because each model only get to fire once, they have a very low damage output. And I don't know why you would take the great bows other than them being kinda cool. I think they are atrocious, amongst the very worst in the simulation. Bottom scrape of the barrel, so I have to give them an absolute F. Terrible ranged unit. Really cool, however. I love the aesthetics of them. Then we have the Beastmen, Angor Raiders. They have the Beastmen Ambush, Primal Fury and Skirmishers. They are equipped with short bows that give them a range of 18 and a strength value of 3 with the volley fire special rule. They have a kind of low point cost, which is beneficial for them. They have the Ambusher special rule, which is somewhat weird because at times they don't get to arrive when you want them, and you also need to field additional Angor Raiders to allow for them to come into play. Their main problem, however, comes from them not being able to be fielded in larger units than 10, making it so that they don't need to test for panic as easily, because they have a really low leadership value of 6, and if they have a full unit of 10, as soon as they take 3 casualties, they need to test panic, and that makes it so that they just run off the table far too easily. They have a low survivability, and even though you get to have plenty of units of them, since they panic so easily, I don't think that they warrant themselves a good grading either. I think I have to give these guys a D, everything considered. Moving on to one of the factions that is known for their shooting capabilities, we have the Wood Elves. And we start off by taking a look at the Glade Guard. They have the Always Strike First and Forest Stalker special rule. They are equipped with the Astrai longbows that has a range of 30 and the Strength 3 with armor piercing and volley fire special rules. And this is an elite ranged unit. It has a very good stat line for shooting. That ballistic skill value of 4 and leadership value of 8, paired with their very good weapon system. Also having the option to pick various magical arrows or equipment makes it so that this is a really good shooting unit against a multitude of different targets. The simulation seems to lend itself that hag arrows, hagbane arrow tips is very good, giving them poison attacks is very good, and they can deal plenty of damage against other targets, only suffering slightly from their low survivability and point cost. Still, I think this warrants them a good ranking of a B. Moving on, we have the Deepwood Scouts. They are similar to the Glade Guard, only that they also get the Scouts and Skirmisher special rule. These added rules, so it makes it so that they are even better than their brethren, and I think it pushes them up to an A tier ranking, as long as you don't pick any weird upgrade or medical arrows for them. The simulation seems to indicate that it is not beneficial to give them Swift Stride arrows or Arcane Bodkins, as they are somewhat too expensive for their point cost. Lastly, we have the Elite Archer unit, the Way Watchers. They have the Always Strike First, Forest Stalker, Hawk-Eyed Archer, Scouts and Skirmisher special rules. They also have the Astrai longbow, same as all of the other Wood Elves, and they have even further improved ballistic skill of 5, which is superb when it comes to ranged combat. That special rule, Hawk-Eyed Archer, makes it so that they can opt to either gain multiple shots 2 or get an Ignores Armor Save special rule, which is excellent when you are fighting the heavily armored cavalry. These guys absolutely butcher cavalry units. They suffer slightly due to their expensive model cost, making them slightly less point effective, but I still think that they warrant themselves an A grade tier ranking, thanks to their excellent stat lines. And we're skipping over Vampire Counts and the Warriors of Chaos because they do not have any ranged units. And we take a look at the Skaven faction. And we start by going over the Night Runners. They are an infantry unit that has the Dodge, Scurry Away, Slinking Advance and Strength in Numbers special rule. And Strength in Numbers is interesting, and it's unique to Skaven, where they get additional leadership from having multiple ranks, making it so that even though they have kind of low leadership values, they can actually stay on the battlefield if you're forced to take panic tests. But they have a low starting value of 6, meaning that these units actually rely on being a large number. So if they get up against anything that starts to put hurt on them, they quickly run away from the table. They also have a really short range from their throwing weapons, which makes it so that they need to come up close and personal before they start dealing any damage. Their low point cost does save them slightly, because you can feel a very large amount of these units, but all in all it doesn't quite add up, and I think I have to give them a E ranking because of everything considered. There is another ranged similar type of unit for the Skaven, that is the Gutter Runners. They have Dodge, Scurry Away, Scouts, Sneaky Infiltrators and Skirmishers. They can also be upgraded to get poisoned attacks. They can be fielded with either throwing weapons that has a range of 6 and a strength of 3 with the quick to fire special rule, but you can upgrade them to have slings with the range of 18 with strength 3 and multiple shots 2 special rule. And it is an interesting unit. It is limited so that you can only have 10 models. They don't have the strength in number special rule to rely upon. They instead need to make use of their average leadership value of 7, which isn't great when you have that few models in each unit. They have excellent amount of special rule, however. They are very mobile with their movement characteristics, and it's an interesting unit. In the simulations they actually perform quite well, and I think I want to give them a C ranking therefore. Lastly, we have the Warplock Yesails, and this is an interesting unit that we've saved for last. It is a special infantry type unit that has the Scurry Away and Strength in Number special rule. It is fielded with the Yesail, which is a special rifle that has a range of 36. A full 6 strength value with armor piercing and unstable ammunition and warpstone weapon special rules. That makes it so that it has magical attacks, and the unstable ammunition makes it so that if you roll a 1, the weapon might blow up. They also have a defensive Pavis, which gives them an armor save of 4+. This unit was kind of hard to evaluate because it has some really outlier stat lines. It has very low leadership. It has the longest range of all infantry models. It has that excellent weapon with that huge drawback from the unstable ammunition, and also having that high strength value of 6 makes it so that if they are left to just shooting, these guys will melt almost anything. The only thing that they are slightly worse against is perhaps infantry units, because they seem to overkill them as well. It's not really that beneficial to pot shot against spearmen when you can fire and kill larger targets or more impactful elite units. They do not fare well in the duel part of the simulation because of their low model count, and even though they have the Pavis to save them, they have a really low leadership, making it problematic when they start to lose models. They did, however, perform amongst the very best against when considering the target practice, when they shot against the other units. So I think that that still warrants them a good A-tier ranking. They are certainly not a unit that you want to be left standing, where they are allowed to freely dish out damage each turn. These guys are really strong at shooting, but they are at the same time really fragile, so if you can pick them off, you probably should. And that concludes our review of the ranged infantry units of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition. Thank you very much for watching. And you can find a link to all of the data in the descriptions down below. And we also welcome you to share your insights and input in the comments down there as well. And ideally, we get to have a discussion about what constitutes a good ranged unit. Because, as previously mentioned, we don't want to make it sound like our finals are any better than your own conclusions. Instead, I think it's healthy to have a discussion which units are good and which ones are great, and try to learn something. Trying to improve and become a better gamer. And with that, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.